Hello and welcome everyone. So today we are going to read about the reflective practice and mentoring, both very important topics in the form of workplace-based assessment and environment, because both of these help grow us as doctors and help us to be more good towards our colleagues. Both of these things, the reflective practice is going to help us to grow the insight and also help us to learn from our previous mistakes. Whereas mentoring, if you're good at that, can really help cultivate a bright future of one of your colleagues. So, what is reflection? As Plato has highlighted, the unreflected life is not worth living. That actually means that whenever something wrong goes in our life, or whenever we find that things are not going in a very right direction, it's always good to sit and understand, analyze what's going wrong, why it's going wrong, and how we can make it better. So, reflective practice is core to the clinical and educational service you deliver as a professional obstetrician and gynecologist. It is central to patient safety and clinical governance. It is about ensuring continued excellence in your practice from a clinical, educational, and ethical perspective. It is about mentoring your continuing professional development, that is CPD. So it is monitoring your CPD and ensuring the revalidation with the GMC in UK. So it's not only useful for your growth as in your insights, it also is useful for the clinical governance part, because it is something that we need to submit every time, and it needs to be a part of your portfolio whenever you're part of something that has gone wrong. So reflection is a much used and abused term. It conjures up the images of water, mirrors, feelings of calm and contemplation, almost the antithesis to the busy working world of an obstetrician and gynecologist. So what does it mean to you? So exactly why do we need reflection? Because we hardly have any time for our basic needs. So what is reflection? So it has got three components. It is a systematic approach to thinking that has a purpose, a goal, and outcome. Okay? It is influenced by the context in which it is being carried out and influenced by self-awareness. So it should come from within. It is a process of analyzing, questioning, and reframing an experience to make an assessment of it for the purpose of learning or improving practice. So basically, when you have uh, you have been through an experience wherein some something is not really good, or you have seen an incident where the outcomes were not very good. In both these cases, you need to analyze, question yourself, and you should be able to sit and reframe the questions on the experience, on how and what could be done better to make it or to prevent the same things or the same mistakes again. So reflection is a type of self-regulated learning Self-regulated learning can be broken into three essential components. Okay, one is cognition, another is metacognition, and third one is motivation. So cognition is a mental process and it is involved in knowing, then understanding and learning it. Okay, so this is cognition. So basic learning process. What is metacognition? It is often defined as learning to learn. So learning on how to learn is metacognition. Motivation is a willingness to engage our metacognitive and cognitive skills. That means to get involved in both these things, the motivation should come from within. Okay, so why should we be reflecting? Reflective thinking is often is perceived as a retrospective activity, a thinking back or process of reviewing what has happened. However, it has also it also has a proactive component in ensuring we are more prepared for a next significant event we encounter, either professionally or personally, through a continuous learning process in which the new knowledge can emerge. That actually means it helps in both the ways. It helps us to know how we have worked and how we have reacted. Also, it helps to do or perform better the next time it comes to us. It enhances the efficiency and effectiveness of learning. It enhances the innovation. It provides the framework for systematic approach to thinking and also supports the clinical and the educator's role. What are the key points to remember? The reflective ability is how we think purposefully about clinical and educational issue. It is influenced by the context on why and where it has been done. It is influenced by our own value system. It increases the effectiveness and efficiency of learning as a clinician and educator, and it enhances innovation and improves the accuracy of decision making. So it basically improves the whole and soul of ours, and it also improves the thinking, it improves our work, it improves our skills, and also how we perceive things. So there are three frameworks which are described by RCOG. You need not go into the details of each of them, but you need to remember the names of it. There's framework 1, 2, and 3, which tells us how we can do the reflective activity. So it's the framework 1 is of Spurs, 2 is John's, and third one is of Peirce. What are the key points to remember from these frameworks? There are several evidence-based frameworks to support the reflective thinking. Reflective thinking in all the three frameworks provided useful questioning techniques. So basically, it gives us an idea on how we can do the reflective practice. So when we sit, we have to think what went wrong, how I could have done it better, right? Reflective thinking involves constantly reviewing and reassessing the perceptual information. All the frameworks involve acknowledging the influence of feelings on thinking process, and all the frameworks are applicable to clinical or teaching situations. So in the medical practice, we can reflect on what are the things where things can really be useful when we reflect. So it can be useful in handovers. So try to give better handovers by doing a reflective thinking on how you can do it better. Educational meetings like journal clubs, teaching sessions, in operating lists. So how you can make a better operating list. Clinical audits, ward rounds, multidisciplinary meetings, and OPD clinics and day theatre list. So it actually can really help us where we have to perform ourselves and also when we are a part of a group. Okay, so it helps communication. It also helps to improve the efficiency of each and every colleague of ours. So reflection, there are two ways. So one is the observed action and second one is indirect observations. So So teaching example is simulation using feedback. So rehearsal using simulation can help to promote and provide the evidence that as a professional doctor, you are able to recognize when you have reached the limits of your competence and can call for help appropriately. Simulation helps us through deliberate feedback to critically reflect on patient scenario and to try out the different alternative solutions to inform our future practice. Whereas in indirect observations, the example taken up is appraisal. Writing can provide evidence of reflective practice using tools such as portfolio of evidence of clinical or educational practice with timed reflective summaries. The logbook record of clinical and educational experience with reflective account diary, journal reflections of self-awareness in relation to the clinical practice blogging. So all this, so you may either do the reflection by observed actions, so you have seen how to do it, or by indirect observations. The advantage of thinking reflectively as a clinician is it encourages the critical thinking, it enables the expansion and adaptation of clinical knowledge, it develops a safe approach to practice, it promotes the effective and efficient safety of patient in complex system. It enables to the relevant knowledge when required, promotes the standards of patient care, and enables the clinician to identify excellence in practice. So basically, it is for our growth and not for someone else. So that's a good thing. So reflective practice for clinical governance. So in most of the circumstances, it is failure in the system rather than an individual that leads to the near misses and the critical incidents in care of patients, often described as Swiss cheese model. So this is about how things can really turn up into a mishap, and it is the cumulative failure of the whole system rather than an individual. Reflection is a very useful process for identifying, critically analyzing, and ensuring the maximal learning. So see how this is working. So there can be problems with the transfer guidelines. There can be problems with the communication amongst the colleagues. Lack of supervision can also play a role. Inadequate training and staffing skills mixed together, inappropriate, improper ventilation technique, and inadequate patient monitoring. When all these things come together, you cannot stop a patient from going through a mishap. Our patient is, of course, going to have some or the other problem. So there are two elements to consider when reviewing reflection is in context of your own clinical practice. How it can help you in your clinical practice. Reflection will help you to learn from the practice, that is CPD, and reflective thinking supports you in making accurate and safe judgments about the patients through risk assessment of options. Reflective thinking is a dynamic process that supports the development of expertise, and it enhances the integration of learning from theory and practice. Shift working requires explicit reflective practices to maximize learning from experience. So basically, it is helping not only on the clinical levels, it is also helping the insights, it is also helping the colleagues and everyone. So it is basically useful at our workplace. How to write a reflection? First, write down the title and the description of the activity or the event. Then write down what have you learned from it. How has this influenced your practice? And looking forward, what are your next steps? So these are the two models that have been given in the recent talks. The first one is the Gibbs reflective framework, and it starts with description of what happened, then the feelings. What were you thinking and feeling at the time of the event? So if you have undergone an event of shoulder dystocia, for example, what all happened? What were you doing at that time? What all came to your mind when you uh, were calling your colleagues? Okay. So evaluation. of what was good and bad about the experience, then analysis of what sense can you make of the situation, conclusion, what else could you have done, and the action plan. If the event arose again, what would you do? So see how this can really help us in our clinical practice and be more confident the next time when it comes up. Another model that we are seeing is the Kolb's cycle of experimental learning, and it is concrete experience, that means doing or having an experience, then the reflective observation of it, that means reviewing and reflecting on the experience, then the abstract conceptualization, which means concluding and learning from the experience, and the last one is active experimentation, that means planning or trying out what you have learned. So this is the Cobb's cycle of experimental learning. So there are two cycles. You need not learn everything, but it's always better to go through it once. The stages of learning by learner consider prior knowledge and personal experience, if any, in a similar encounter. So, internal experience, it focuses attention on different aspects of the clinical case and its complexity. That means assimilation. This could be during or after the action. So, one is internal experience. Second word important here is assimilation. Third thing is the external experience. Then it brings to bear the context of the case, including the wider context of the team, that means temporal relations. It considers the emotional factors, professional values, and human values in managing the patient. Also, as a result of new experience, it considers exploring and researching for existing evidence or literature about the case. It assimilates, another important word, the new knowledge and change of cognitive structures leading to accommodation, and it mentally formulates an action plan or a modified way of acting as a result of present encounter, which is to be implemented in the future. It considers whether a written record of this process is necessary or not. Okay, so this part is very important from the point of view of your exam. Reflective notes can be required by the court of law. Therefore, any such note should focus on learning rather than the full discussion of the case or situation, and factual details should be recorded elsewhere. So write down what you have learned. There remains a tension in these circumstances as the assessment usually requires evidence of deep reflection, but when documented, this type of reflection may expose the vulnerability of the individual. That means that once you have gone through an incident, you sometimes feel that you could have done this better, whereas the ground reality might be a little different. So this is basically you're writing your own thoughts. So it is always better to write down what you have learned rather than just writing the it is important to write the facts, the factual things, rather than just thinking uh, in a different way or telling the whole incident as such. And that is why, because this can be utilized by the court when they are going through a litigation. Okay? So the doctors in training should include the insights gained and any changes made to the practice in the learning portfolio. So of course, the big things shouldn't be missed. You should not be fooling the court, of course. But the reflective practice should be written in such a way that if it is taken as a document, it should give the right idea of what exactly happened and what exactly do you feel out of it. Supervisors should confirm in a learning portfolio that the experience has been discussed. So even the supervisors needs to see how the reflective practice has been done by the student. Agree appropriate learning outcomes and the plan actions. Sharing original non-anonymized information with the supervisors is important. Okay, but factual details should not be recorded in the learning portfolio. So remember this, that once you have written a reflective practice and you're putting it in your portfolio, it is better to get it uh, confirmed and by your supervisors, because you may not need some facts which you have written. Okay, so coming to the next topic, which is mentoring. And this is how the mentoring should be. It shouldn't look like a teaching guru who is teaching a student, or someone who, it is not like a tutor or a coaching class, right? So it is basically helping the colleagues in a better way and also help them grow. So the dictionary definition of mentoring is to advise or train someone, especially a younger colleague. There is much overlap with supervision and coaching, but mentoring in medicine is generally defined as the process whereby an experienced, highly regarded, empathetic individual is a mentor, guides another, that is, mentee, in the development and re examination of their own ideas, learning, and personal and professional development. The self-assessment in the previous pages reinforced how mentoring is about building a personal relationship to suit the needs of the individual. There is no right or wrong approach, and in a profession such as medical profession, the professional should make time to support and assist each other, as this can only improve the team spirit and the professional practice. And a mentor should not normally be your educational supervisor, as this is a role of its own, and it is often useful to have advice from outside those responsible for your assessment and education. So remember, it's not necessary and shouldn't normally be your educational supervisor, because educational supervisor has got different responsibilities, right? And he is the one who can be there when you are doing your assessments. So mentor should be one who should be present with you, who should be empathetic with you, and should know what you're actually going through and be there with you all the time. Okay. So what is mentoring? A mentoring is a skilled and trusted helper who guides. A mentor is a skilled and a trusted helper who guides another individual through a process to help them achieve their potential or reflect on problems they move forward. So a mentor should be more experienced, well-regarded professional who acts as a guide and support for professional development. And the role of a mentor is different or distinct from an advocate, an advisor, a preceptor, a tutor, and an educational advisor. Okay. A successful mentoring relationship requires characters of a good mentor and a good mentee to meet. Distinct from training, appraisal, and disciplinary proceedings, a good mentoring relationship is underpinned by the following principles. So, what are the things that are important in mentoring? A mentee should take the ownership of the process, driving relationship and initiating the contact. So, it's mentee based process. Second thing is the relationship should be confidential, the base of every relationship. The relationship is built on trust and mutual respect. The mentee should feel empowered to take responsibility for their learning. The relationship should be a safe environment for work, training related discussions, and mentoring is appropriate at all the stages in the career of doctor. So remember the last thing, because this has been asked as a question, and it is appropriate to do the mentoring at all the stages. So even the undergraduates can do it, right? So remember, of all these things, basically these are the things that are responsible for all the type of relations. So what is the model of for mentoring? So this is the EGAM's skilled helper model. It is a three-stage model that acts as an aid to help people solve the problems and develop the opportunities. So the first thing is to see what the current scenario is. Second is the preferred scenario, and third is the action strategies. Okay. So in the current scenario, help the mentee to explore their role, then see what are the blind spots, and then leverage. Okay, so focus and prioritize. In the preferred scenario, help the mentee to think about their needs, change the agendas, and to see whether the commitments are there. So there should be goals achievable and suitable. And the action strategies help the mentee to consider how they might achieve their goals and then make a plan. So these are the ways of helping your mentee. Formal e-mentoring schemes do exist in some DNABs, and its aims are similar face-to-face mentoring. The benefits may include more flexible pace and scheduling. Communication can take place regardless of physical and geographical boundaries. Communication can take place in more comfortable environment and decrease feelings of intimidation or discomfort. So these are all the benefits of e-mentoring. However, this method seems to go against the importance of face-to-face communication and compromises the privacy and confidentiality. So it may actually can be shared. So we know how in e-mentoring, how the videos get shared, how the material gets shared, right? So it is a compromise on privacy and confidentiality. There have been few evaluation studies on the effectiveness of e-mentoring. So the relationship between the mentor and the mentee is one of trust and support, and as such should operate with ethical boundaries very similar to those required for appraisals. So remember, the relationship should be based on trust and support. That's the base of every relationship, and specifically in a mentor and a mentee, for the mentee to develop the confidence in mentor. Feedback and advice must be impartial and without bias on personal gain, and confidentiality should be paramount and realized. If the mentor learns anything that may indicate that the patient has been, maybe, or has been harmed, then the mentor has the ethical duty as a doctor to prevent that risk. So if the patient safety is coming in your way, so dealt with. It may be limited to encouraging the mentee to change their practice or resolve the mentee's problems. However, failure of the mentee to take advice will require formal action, such as contacting the vice president, the defense union, or even the GMC. So remember, the point that is written in red is important, that if the mentee doesn't come and doesn't take your advice, and if there's any failure in that, of course you can take a formal action. Finding a mentor that you feel comfortable to work with is crucial to develop for the development of a successful mentoring relationship. If you have difficulty finding a mentor, you may use mentoring schemes. There are different schemes by which you may find a mentor. What are the benefits for a mentee? It encourages the insight and reflections of a mentee, offers the alternative perspective. It also helps to control the career development, stepping stone to opportunities. It gives greater understanding of the perspective of others. It increases the job satisfaction, and also the mentees can develop their own mentoring skills. What are the benefits for a mentor? It increases the job interest, the satisfaction, improves the communication skills, and also there is a greater self-understanding. So of course, whenever we want to help others, the first thing that we do is we see and we develop our own selves, right? So mentoring framework. The following framework may be used in structuring a mentoring relationship. So before the first meeting, what needs to be done? Inform your line manager or education supervisor, as they may be able to assist or support you in establishing your mentoring relationship. So that's the first thing to be done before the meeting. At the first meeting, identify the mentor and the mentee's needs, strengths, expectations, and objectives. So see, what do you want from each other? Discuss the ground rules. So what are the things that shouldn't be breached anytime? So confidentiality, boundaries of the relationship should be discussed. The commitment, the documentation, arrangement, and discuss the exit submitting. Now, target made through the mentoring relationship should be SMART, which means it should be specific, and measurable and within a realistic time frame. So it should be longer, more than 5 years goal. With long-term goals in mind, create smaller short-term goals. Okay. So consider what issues hinder my career development, my strengths, and what do I find challenging, what helps me to work efficiently. So you may help your mentor may help you with all these things. Decide on the time frame of each goal and outline a plan to achieve each goal. Okay. Break the complex goals into the smaller steps so that each goal can be focused on one step. So take one step at one time. So this is the target why your mentor should be there, and you should be taking help of your mentor in all these things. At the subsequent meetings, review the outstanding issues, discuss the new issues, the career direction, progression, the feedback. This is very important. Feedback can really help you grow. Decide upon the actions of mentee and the mentor. Set the date and the goals of the next meeting, and end what will be useful in ending a mentoring relationship. So, whenever you feel that things are not working well, how do you end a mentoring relationship? A situation may arise whereby it is necessary to end a mentoring relationship as it has run its course on because it is not working. Okay, for one or both the parties. Either party should have the opportunity to end the relationship without any attachment of blame, and the ground rules for how this is to be achieved should be set in the beginning of a relationship. So that has to be seen in the very first meeting itself. So this is a very common scenario that we see outside the labor walls. Trainees can experience difficulty for various reasons. It is important to recognize the root of a problem. Okay, so mentoring can be extremely useful tool for doctors who have experienced difficulties with their performance and who have been suspended from the duties for any length of time. It is very important that the mentoring is separate from any disciplinary arrangement. So remember, mentor is the one who is empathizing person, a person who helps and gives the direction, and not someone who puts discipline, okay, or who gives uh, punishments. So this is a person, and rather than calling a difficult trainee, start calling a trainee in difficulty, because not everyone wants to be rude unnecessarily. So mistakes do happen, and sometimes people go through very difficult times. So try to be a little more empathetic towards them. Now, how do the doctors get into difficulty? Because they don't have enough support. They are overworked, bullying, which is very common in OBGY, career, exam anxieties, social pressures, relationships, finance, health. So all the personal things can also make take the doctor into difficulties in the professional uh, places, right? Lack of insight, poor role models, medical errors, and poor personal qualities and professional attitudes. So who is at risk because of this? Your patients, your trainee, your team, your organization. So basically everyone. So that is why a mentor should really help these people. So what can a mentor do? Offer support at any disciplinary meetings, because this can really help the person during the disciplinary meetings, because the person may really collapse because of the disciplinary actions taken against that person. Understand the trainee's perspective of their difficulty, avoid any judgments. Okay. Explore reasons for difficulties, ensure plenty of time to meet in privacy. Explain and arrange the available resources. Like, you may also provide education, psychologists, counseling. Encourage the reflection and acceptance as appropriate. Discuss your own approach to difficult situations and meet frequently to work through problems steadily. So don't expect miracles. So you have to work on a mentee very slowly. Now, this is again a very important thing and cannot be missed. So this is a note on mentoring code of conduct. The relationship between the mentor and the mentee is confidential, personal, with ethical boundaries. There should be an agreement between the mentor and the mentee not to divulge the content of the mentoring session. So it should be completely confidential. That's one. Second thing is, mentors should act within the principles of GMC practice. Okay. So it should be a good medical practice in the form of the principles of good practice. Notes may be kept to facilitate the future meetings, but they shouldn't be. So you can make notes out of it. notes would, under extreme circumstances, be required to be disclosed under Data Protection Act. So it shouldn't be actually used against someone, but if in extreme circumstances, it may be disclosed under Data Protection Acts. The GMC can also use the confidential reports sometimes, right? So that's again an important thing to remember, that whatever you're writing shouldn't be harming someone. So if you want to make notes out of your mentoring, please make in such a way that it shouldn't harm the mentee at a very large extent. A mentor are specifically asked not to get involved with the mentee's potential dealings with any outside body, but can help to plan the mentee's approach to coping with the effects of difficulties and problems. So, of course, the mentors are not responsible for what the mentee does, but they should always be supporting whenever the mentee requires. So, this is me trying to be a good mentor. Sorry for the mistake in the spelling there. So I hope this session has really helped you, because these are the topics we forget to read, and also we don't know what's important in this. So though it was a little long lecture, but it has covered two most important topics, which if asked you will be able to answer